one kind or another. The other half is more humanities and other social sciences.
Okay.
And we also integrated
that's
few
right.
years ago
Thank
with
you. The ACTCM, so the
American College of Traditional Chinese Medicine. So
that's right.
we also have
The third or a fourth school now. So
And what departments you hold in this institute?
There's the Philosophy, Cosmology, and Consciousness program, this one.
Okay.
There's an East-West Psychology program.
Okay.
There's an Asian
philosophies and
cultures. There's an integral counseling and psychology. Integrals.
Are you talking about Glenn's?
There's the integral and transpersonal psychology, which is online. But then in the so-called professional, in the professional school, I say so-called because we consider ourselves professionals as well. But in the professional psychology school, there's the integral counseling, which is called integral counseling.
Integral counseling, like
and also somatic psychology, expressive arts therapy,
and
yoga also.
We don't have a yoga. For a while, we tried a yoga certificate, an integral yoga certificate, but for some reason it didn't match.
Yoga has been taught in APC, in the Asian Philosophies and Cultures.
There are courses on yoga and Vedanta and other themes related to Hinduism and Buddhism primarily, but then also, Chinese philosophy as well. So.
You have some dialogues with the practicing scientists and the current state of thought process about consciousness. Do you have something like that?
We have over the years. We don't have anything ongoing.
Okay.
Well,
actually, we were in London 2 months back. And there was a conference that organized the Scientific and Medical Network.
Oh yes.
And they invited us as key speakers. And there, we're speaking on science and spirit, Eastern and Western perspective. So they specifically arranged for this mystics and scientists conference they organize every year. They specifically invited for us, and that theme was very similar to our conference, that we organize science and scientists. So in that conference, we discussed what are the Western. This is our upcoming conference.
Oh yes,
which will be
I saw.
at Bhubaneswar in India. These are all some. I don't have more copies of one of the past conference in souvenir. Basically, we are having dialogues with the scientists, and we are publishing also some papers in the peer-reviewed journals. And we want to have this type of things also here in US. We're exploring for that in future. So looking for collaborative kind of work for that.
Yeah, sure. It'd be good for you to be in touch with the organizers of the Science and Non-Dual Wisdom people. They have an annual conference. Here in California, yeah. It's called Science and Non-Dual Wisdom, is that right?
Or Science and Non-Duality.
Science and Non-Duality. So there's an annual Science and
This is
Non-Duality.
Deepak Chopra's?
I'm not sure whether.
So.
No, I'm not sure who organizes it, but but if you Google Science and Non-Duality Conference.
And your institute works on this type of topics?
Well, we have, individuals work on it.
Yeah, I think, more than most places do.
Yeah, more than most places.
So we have within our within the transpersonal psych field, there's definitely, we have people who work on that. I think
Leslie Combs,
Center for
Consciousness
Studies is particularly interested in that kind of.
And what do you think your view about consciousness? Whether it can be understood within the domain of physics, chemistry, and mathematics, and biology. In fact, is a combination of all these things. They have not done anything special in biology. So, do you think it is possible?
I think it's possible and necessary to have some kind of understanding of the relationship of our embodied existence, both as organisms and as physical beings, as cosmological beings, to the question of consciousness. I think any account of consciousness that didn't include that would be incomplete. At the same time, I don't believe that a complete account can be given on the basis of physics or biology. So
in science, generally what we observe is that they are only worried about what is observed, and they rarely talk about the process of observing or the knowing process, and completely ignoring the knower. So in our Vedantic tradition, they have been explaining about not only epistemology, but there is emphasis on the person also, and and relationship between many subjects. See, we can come from the material consciousness to a self consciousness, that who is observing and what is the process is using. We can come to the self, but there are many selves, and to deal with that will be difficult. So they have a unity for that, and there comes the role of absolute, and his this reality is a manifestation of his variegated energies. So, and how these energies are interacting, and what's the relationship with the Shaktiman, or the source of all these energies, and he's also a person, and how we can relate to this reality. These are different philosophy, and they go to different levels, and there are broad category you'll find of consciousness in Vedanta. One is exploitative consciousness, another is renouncing, and third one is dedicating. So based on that, different paths are there. And if you see exploitating, then they're all materialist, you can say, like a karmis. And there are two levels of what you can say, the renouncing tendencies in between. That means tyag, renouncing tendencies. One is gyan marg. Through mental speculation, he wants to know the absolute. It's gyan marg, we call it in Vedantic traditions. And there is another process, is yogis. And these two personalities, they realize two different aspect of absolute. One, Jnanis, they realize absolute as Brahman. Brahman means impersonal, effulgence of the Lord. They realize, and they think that it is something inconceivable. It cannot be known, unknowable, and we can merge into that. That type of mentality. Yes. So they were Brahma Suja, liberation mentality they practice. Jnanis. And then yogis, they have some conception of personality of the absolute. That's known as Paramatma. You heard this name?
Yes.
Paramatma. So they wants to see Lord. Jnanis wants to know Lord, and yogis wants to see Lord. So they meditate to see the form of the Lord. So here, these two personalities, they only practice renunciation. Materialist only exploiting, but these two practices, they practice renunciation, and this is also termed in one way as exploitation, because there is a importance of false self is there. One is thinking that I want to know, another thing I want to see. So one is karmi, is the materialist. They are exploiting at the grosser plane, and they are exploiting at the subtle plane. So another level is there where it is dedication or bhakti or bhaktas, you can say. They are also approaching Lord, but not as Brahman or Paramatma, which is already included in Bhagavan. This is another term, is called Bhagavan. Bhagavan means there is not alone like Paramatma. He has personality, but with him you will find his pleasure potency like Lakshmi Narayan. You will find Sita Ram, Radha Krishna, and his world is there. Not only he is there with his pleasure potency, but he has associates and he has pastimes. And they approach to Lord not for themselves, to see or know. They want to only satisfy Lord. How I can please Lord. So different attitude. So in that, different gradations of dedications are there. As exploitation also different gradations, and renunciation also different gradations, dedication also different gradations. So it is being told the plane of material existence is a perverted reflection of the plane of dedication. There is already spiritual world. The forms that we are seeing in this world, like say bacteria to human being, they are already existing in the spiritual sky. And what we are seeing is a perverted reflection of that real plane. So Buddhism basically came after ending of Dwapar Yuga and beginning of Kali Yuga, And the purpose of Buddhism was actually Lord Vishnu only incarnated as Buddha. In our tradition, you can see a lot of explanations about that. So the Buddha's advent, the purpose was to stop misutilizing the fire sacrifices. There are 4 ages you might be knowing. One is Satya Yuga, another is Treta Yuga, and then Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga. So Satya Yuga, the lifespan of people were different. They were living 100,000 years in the Satya Yuga. And Treta Yuga, they're living 10,000 years lifespan. And in Dwapar Yuga, it is 1,000 years. In the Kali Yuga, order is 100 years. So in this way, 10 times it reduces. So people's height and this whole different atmosphere is different, because it is all based on Sattva Rajatama, permutation combinations, which is dominating in which yoga and what aspect, what percentage, all these things. So the practices are also different for God realization. In the age of Kali Yuga, they were meditating for thousands of years. There are different rishis like Vishwamitra Muni meditating for 33,000 years. The different examples you will find in the reference. And in the Treta Yuga, the process is fire sacrifice. I mean, the persons who are qualified for that means if you kill an animal for fire sacrifice, immediately that soul you have to give a new body. If you cannot give that, then you have no qualification to do that fire sacrifice. So that was the practice different. Like Lord Ram, who came in Treta Yuga, he practiced many fire sacrifices. And then in Dwapar Yuga, it is a strict temple worship, following rules and regulations. Very strict rules and regulations. But in the age of Kali, the process is of chanting of the holy name of the Lord. So these are the different systems. If you see the different ages that is being explained. So the in other ages, the practices are more centered around the dedication is not of the highest dedication. Even though in Dwapar Yuga the highest dedication is the pastime has been revealed, but is not distributed. In spiritual realization, in Vedantic tradition, it is the Vrindavan which is considered the highest place. You know about different planets, right? Vaikuntha planets in our tradition. Is Vrindavan is the highest. So, but in the age of Kali, when Lord Krishna himself comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he distributes that love of God. So, in our tradition, Buddhism came to stop the animal killing or the fire sacrifice, which is being misutilized in the age of Kali. Because people don't have power to make the soul get the new body. They don't have such power. But they are quoting the reference of that and they are doing that. So Buddha told, use your buddhi. Buddhi means the rational world started from. No need of following any of these scriptures. Use your rationality. And then he stopped these fire sacrifices, torture to the animals. And Buddhism was widespread in India, and from India it went to different parts. And after this Buddhism stopped these fire sacrifices, then after a certain time, again in a lot of degradation occurred. Then Lord sent another Acharya, who is Lord Shiva himself. He came as Shankaracharya. And Shankaracharya, he changed Buddhism out of India. It's almost not existing. It was that one. It was very much prominent. And Shankara was starting his movement. Then Shankaracharya challenged us. The Sunyavad, from no non-existence to there is only one existence. From Sunyavad to Monism came only one existence. This is a Brahman. But then in other acharyas came, if you see Madhava is always showing two fingers like this. There is the difference between Lord and the living entities. And Ramanuja Acharya also, they try to establish the permanence of living entities and also absolute. Like Shankara's argument was that there is one moon, but there is many reflecting medias, and that one moon is shown by all this this very variegatedness that we are seeing is because of that reflection. But Ramanuja and others also argued, if you say there is one, but there is already you are talking about reflection and this reflecting media, so already it is many so that philosophy flaw they have shown from that argument, and they shown that actually already variety exists in the spiritual sky, and in the material sky we only see a perverted reflection. Like in water, The tree is there, the reflection you see is going downward. But in the actual tree, it is going upward. So we supposed to serve the absolute. We are living in an organic world, but we supposed to dedicate and serve the absolute. But because of our false understanding of self, we forgotten that relation, and we have made a different new identity, bodily identity, or different like social identity, country identity, different identities that we have developed, different levels of powerful voice here. So the religion is meant to help us to overcome this powerful. That means our material consciousness is must take us towards our real constitutional self. But in modern science, we don't find that type of approach to consciousness, because in modern science, what we see is that it is focused on only two causes: material cause and efficiency. So to go towards the internal cause is much more difficult. So talk about now. However, now in biology and other research, we find a lot of open to talk about this, because evidence shows that. If you see in Cambridge, there was a conference, Franciscan Memorial Conference, and they have a Cambridge Declaration. They say that human to octopus, all non-human animals, they are also conscious entities. So many years of research helped them to know this much, that animals are also conscious. And plant biologists, obviously they're talking about plant consciousness, plant identity of self, and bacterial consciousness also become a topic of study in science. So it's becoming a favorable atmosphere to discuss Vedanta in science. And many scientists are looking for alternative approach. And we have a group also, and there are scientists who are publishing papers on this field also. So that's our field, is to look into this type of like a common ground.
It's wonderful. Please chime in whatever you want, but I do have a question for you.
Yes.
Many people in our community are tracking these developments you're talking about in science, with the favorable reception of the term panpsychism, for instance,
Yes.
and all kinds of exciting developments. At the same time, many people in our community are tracking another development, which has both a kind of positive and there's a growing awareness that the planet as a whole is awakening to itself as a planet. And the kind of external correlate to this is consciousness of rising ecological consciousness, environmental awareness, the realization that we are all part of a single web of life, of interdependent life, and so on. Now, some people, like you were saying, that every organism here, every being, has its correlate of its own purusha, maybe its own soul dimension. Yeah. So one would expect, and some people in the West, like Fechner, I don't know if you've come across the name of Fechner before, Fechner, or maybe even Terre de Chardin, or others have stated that they believe that the Earth itself, or herself, has a soul. Of course, the ancients in the West talked about the anima mundi.
Gaia concept?
Gaia, it's a Gaia concept, and a spiritual inflection of the Gaia concept. Of course, scientists don't like to talk about this very much. They don't even many don't even like the word Gaia. But those who are open to the spiritual dimension of things.
Margulis.
Lynn Margulis.
Yes.
Well, she was really she was really the champion of the bacteria.
Yeah.
And for her, Gaia was this very thin layer of bacterial life that
symbiotic exchange.
Yeah. But I don't know whether she would have been too open to the idea that the planet as a whole has a kind of soul.
Actually, Vedanta says this, that water, fire, everything is actually personality.
But what about the Earth as a whole? Does the Earth have a
Earth
soul?
also personality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Earth has a personality.
For
your
in Vedanta,
tradition?
for Prithvi.
It has a name called Bhudevi.
Bhudevi.
Yes.
Bhudevi. And what is the Bhu is not the same as the Buddhi. It's different.
No,
different.
Bhu means earth.
Earth. Bhudevi. Ah, okay.
Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha.
Uh-huh.
Bhu is earth.
Ah, Bhudevi. Okay. So, so this is something that I'd be very interested in exploring from your tradition. Now, of course, the other thing I'm wondering about is many people that we're in touch with believe that we're right on the edge of probable civilizational collapse.
Yes.
Probably within the next 10 years. And that could be followed by irreversible biospheric collapse.
Yes.
We're already in a mass extinction event. The oceans are dying, the forests are disappearing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So we seem to be at a critical point of the Kali Yuga in that sense.
You know what is the lifespan of Kali Yuga?
I did, but I can never remember.
4 lakh means
4,000. It's 4,000, 5,000 some years.
4,35,000 years.
Say again.
4 lakh means 400,000. 4,32,000 years.
400. Oh, that's
yes. 432,000 years.
Right. So
now only 5,000 years has been passed.
Okay. Well, maybe the last.
That's what what you are saying is just 1,200 years of demigods. That's not human calculation.
I see. Right. Well, I mean, I can imagine a very long. The majority of the Kali Yuga would be just a stretch of desert, but the part that we're in now, it seems to be a critical turning point.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm wondering if your tradition is aware of this critical moment we're at.
Yes.
Right now.
Certainly.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the in the Kali Yuga, this is the best time for the living entities to go towards spiritual advancement. Like she's told that after certain time, like 10,000 years, and it will be difficult. In the sense, the holy places and all those things will disappear. People would not tell you that you have to think about these things like soul and there is something. Still, you will find people who are telling you about these things. You will not find people even. And the scriptures and everything will be disappearing. And people are just like having these poultry farms for the animals. They may do that for human being. Exploitation is the only their practice. No other things. Now you see that what degree it's been degraded. So to stop exploitation is not only our goal. You have to give a positive engagement also. Tyag means just stop it. You are eating something, just stop it. That is not going to solution, because after some time you feel hungry. So the thing is that killing to the human being is very bad thing. But the country's soldier killing for the country, he's getting awards. But the same gun, if he uses for himself, he will be punished. So what Bhagavad Gita says that you have to learn to dedicate everything, including our food. Lord has given some instruction, our Vedic science gives some instructions how to prepare everything for Lord and offer Him, and then you can take it. Certain restrictions are there, right? Means animals you don't find disciplines, and human can have a disciplined life, and he can have a discrimination mother, and how he can relate to mother, sister, and different disciplines are there. You will not find that in animals. But a human means he has some advanced what you can say consciousness, developed consciousness. So which is not accessible for other living entities. You cannot educate a bacteria or a tree about all these things, religion and philosophy, all those things. You cannot do that. They have some understanding, no doubt, but that is not to the highly developed level. They don't have any so-called religion, philosophy, and things like that, the way humans does things. So how to use our life properly? There comes the role of religion. And different religions, our tradition, Vedantic tradition says Christianity and even Muslim tradition, they are bona fide religions, and they have a role to play. In our Vedantic tradition, you find so many different practices. So every practices have a certain role to play. Like how this jungle of religions manifested, it is told the first knowledge when Lord gives to Brahma, then what Lord meant when he told that and what Brahma received, there is little difference is there. And when he given that knowledge to his students, then some difference happened. And when in this way it came down, so the jungle of religion manifested. So in the midst of this jungle of religion, we should not forget the real purpose of religion. The real purpose of religion is to cultivate our love for the Absolute. We meant to love and serve Him. That is our real existence. But we've forgotten that, and many varieties of other engagement at different levels of exploitation we found out. Even renunciation is also called as kind of exploitation. It is It is known as passive hostility. Being active hostility is exploitation that we are seeing. And renunciation is passive hostility. We want to release the inner bliss or whatever it is, but we are not meant to be the enjoyer. Hand by nature is to serve the belly. The constitutional position of hand to serve the belly. Hand, leg, they are working hard, but it's the belly which is enjoying. But if hand, leg try to think that they are the enjoyer, then whole thing face difficulties. So we say that reality is an organic whole. It has a personality, and the center of that whole is absolute. And everything in that whole, the members of that whole, are meant to satisfy the center. And because we have not utilized our freedom for that, our position, because in any country they give freedom to the civil citizens, and that freedom is meant to be a good citizen. And if we violate against the interest of the country, then we are being punished. Our freedom is checked. So illusion or Maya, Mahamaya is called, is for that such relevant souls, those who are rebellious in nature. For them, this Durga means like a jail. They are put in the jail of cycle of birth and death. We want to live, everybody wants to live, but they are dying. Their nature is that they are eternal, but they are dying because of false idea. So the false conception is given those who wants to be living that type of idea. So this is explained in Gita also. You will find Krishna says, "Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sateva bhajamyaham." The way you approach me, I also approach you in that way. So this type of understanding is there.
Jake or Aaron, do you have any comments or questions for that? Yes.
I certainly could think of a lot of points of discussion. I mean, there's been so much brought up. It sounds to me like the overall sort of attitude of your presentation here is that science is fulfilled in Vedantic knowledge.
Science
is fulfilled in Vedantic knowledge.
Completed, you mean, or complete, fulfilled? Or
Yeah.
completed, or?
I don't know the difference between completed and fulfilled in this context. So,
what do you mean by fulfilled?
That it is brought to a genuine certainty about the nature of reality. Does that sound accurate?
What I can say, in our tradition, every field, maybe it's science, or maybe it is fighting, or maybe it is philosophy, everything has its a real representation when it is related to as a serving what you can say practice for the absolute.
Got it.
Even science can be used.
Sure.
Even killing can be used. Bhagavad Gita is teaching Arjuna to kill.
Yeah.
So
Chapter
even
2.
killing can be used for the service. So science is not meant to glorify ourselves. How I am so great. It's not the objective of science. Science is to glorify. You see a small cell, a blade of grass. It's extraordinary. A blade of grass cannot be produced in the laboratory. But nature is doing that. So science is meant to glorify him and to engage in the service of the absolute. In past, there was also, if you see, archaeological studies, they were also doing so many things which you can talk. You are not giving the name of science, but Vigyan is there, the word which is used in Vedanta, and they were using that actually. Vigyan means practical knowledge. Science means practical knowledge, and Gyan means theoretical knowledge.
So I have a question about this, because I'm trying to remember. Maybe one of you can remind me. There's this phrase called like a methodological atheism. And so rather than a statement that there is no God taken to be a representation of some actual truth, instead it's taken as an assumption that can sort of guide a principled mode of examination of nature. And so you could say that doubt about, say, the Supreme Personality or that kind of thing helps science to be scientific. And so because of that sort of argument, I find it doesn't necessarily bother me if scientists are doubtful or skeptical about spiritual realities. I don't feel that their doubt has to make me doubtful, even if I appreciate the outcomes of science. But by the same token, I don't feel a need to try to convince them of something that is sort of extra scientific. So
I have a point to add.
Sure, yeah.
In modern science, we accept everything based on evidence. This is the foundation, right? Everything based on evidence. So from Vedantic side, this is our argument. See, if we are accepting everything based on evidence, then the evidence shows that life comes from life. You see all the evidence. Always biogenesis is a empirically established fact, which Louis Pasteur done the experiment to establish biogenesis. Life is always coming from life. But we never find even a single evidence which will substantiate opposite. The matter is producing life. So Vedanta says that whole, from whole another whole comes. Om Purnamidam, that sloka it says in Isopanishad invocation. It is the whole which produces many wholes. Whole is not the outcome. A organic whole is not the outcome of mechanical or chemical accumulation of parts. So this is what we want to say to scientists. Okay, we are ready to accept the scientific foundation. So let us accept the evidence. Life is coming from life. If that is the case, then you have to accept it is life which is primordial or fundamental, not the matter. And opposite we see, matter is produced by life. You see your nail is growing, your hair is growing. A tiny seed is producing a gigantic tree. Yes.
But there is the cosmological evidence of evolutionary cosmology, which they would say there is every evidence to believe that there was a time, for instance. Where,
what evidence you suggest for that?
Well, the geological record, let's say, just on Earth.
Yes.
There was a time when everything on Earth was molten rock. There was no living organization in our solar system, and we can extrapolate and say that there was a time when the visible cosmos consisted of nothing but hydrogen gas. It appears that, at least in time, life did emerge from matter.
Now you say about geological evidence.
Yeah.
When you say about fossil evidence. So fossil evidence, they could never substantiate the four problems they could not solve. One is stasis, sudden appearance of form, sudden disappearance of form, and absence of intermediate. Stasis means for a long time you will never find the living entity changing for millions of years. If there is evolution, it must be always changing. And sudden disappearance of form, in the sense, if they see in the geological evidence, atmosphere is very favorable, and the theory says the atmosphere is favorable, life must flourish. But why in that favorable atmosphere, all of a sudden species disappear? And then sudden appearance of form. If it is evolution which is happening always, then why Cambrian explosion has to come up, and all of a sudden all the forms has to manifest? Okay, this is another thing. And then intermediate form means, if I say from a calculator laptop came, from calculator to laptop, there is a lot of change of the parts and things like that. That change never being recorded. The mechanism, we don't find that record of mechanism. What we say that a developed organism, either calculator or a laptop. But in between those changes are being not recorded, and this is well known. And now, if you see geology gone into another level, they doubt the basic foundation of the time scales. If you see the experiments of Guy Brittelt, he did the theories of calculating the chronological studies in geology was based on Nicholas Steno, who did he given that the horizontality, the theory of horizontality, like layer by layer formation of rocks. The idea was that the bottom of the rock is the oldest one and the top of the rock is the youngest one, because what they are thinking, the whole earth was covered with still water and the sediments with the depositing, and layer by layer the rocks form, which dried out and become rocks, sedimentary rocks basically. But now they are saying based on fluid motion, because that kind of study that Nicholas Steno proposed, that it does not include the fluid motion. But this scientist, when he did experiments in University of Colorado, got his PhD and has many publications, and he found out that if you see, when the works are going on in the road, if you cut the rocks are of different colors, different depth, you find different colors, and they represent a particular material at particular depth. So he did experiment with the still water and in the vacuum and also moving fluid, and he found very interesting results. In the still water, the deposition is occurring. These all sediments are mixed together. Means they taken different size of the sediments, they colored it, and they find it's just mixing of the different particles. And in the vacuum also, there's intermechanical interaction mixture. But when he done it in a moving fluid, and then he found out very interesting results. But he found out that different particle size, they deposit at different layers. So from his experiment, it is established that it is the direction of the fluid motion which decides the chronology of the rocks, not the depth what they conceived. So that changed the whole thought of the chronology, way geology was thinking about that. And you could find, I can give you n number of references, that present references which talks about nature and science. They're talking that we should rewrite the chronology.
So are you challenging then, for instance, was a ball of molten rock?
For our Vedic science, it is much more than that. Okay, but time is not a problem for us. But what we say that science don't have a clear methodology to unearth the secrets of history. Suppose if I ask you, what is your date of birth?
June 4th, 1957.
If I ask like that, but you cannot get the answer from a scientist. You have to go to the person who witnessed your birth, and he told you, and you are just simply following.
That's right, just hearsay. For me, it's just hearsay.
Yeah.
I've always thought, and then I've got various records. And
Yeah, you cannot have a scientist to tell about your history. History is not possible to tell. Even if I ask somebody who is your father, he cannot do experiments for the whole world to know his father. He needs some hint, some direction.
No, that's true. It's always based on inferences and so on. But there is a consensus about the age of the Earth. There's a consensus about the early conditions of the galaxy and of the cosmos.
Yes, our idea of life goes much beyond biological life. In Vedanta, it talks about there are bodies which are mind bodies, which are ego bodies, they're intellectual bodies. So it goes.
What the cosmology is telling, modern age is about 4 billion or something, no? 4 billion years.
4.6 billion for the Earth.
So now, according to our calculations, the universe has 2 types of pranaya, means resolutions. After which it is again being created. So one is total resolution, which doesn't happen always. There are periodic resolutions of certain level, in which certain level of universe comes. And second point is that total age of universe is not billion, is 1.55 trillion. So already so many resolutions have already occurred.
Since the last Maharaja.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I have no problem with that at all. Personally.
We accept the fossil record also. It supports a sudden appearance of form, then gradual change. If you see the Cambrian explosion, you know about Kunin. He has the idea of biological Big Bang. There's a theory of that. And you can read about that, biological Big Bang. Has many good scientists from America. And he has many papers, and you can read about his biological Big Bang. The idea of a tree of life, what Darwin proposed, already it is disproved. Because the tree of life, what they constructed on fossil data, that does not match with the tree that they wanted to construct on genetic data. So they found out that all things are mixed together. It's a forest of life. It's no longer tree of life. The Human Genome Project already established that. So the different way of finding this relationship between so-called evolution of bodies, that does not match actually. They are
Cladistics doesn't refute evolution. Evolution is a paradigmatic concept for biology.
No, you have to have some concept to say that how species appeared. But whether it is evolution or not, that we have to see.
Sure.
We also accept evolution. Evolution we accept, and that is subjective evolution of consciousness. Our concept of evolution is based on consciousness. And the present idea what Darwin proposed and the successors are continuing, it's an objective evolution of bodies.
Yeah.
What they think is that this building came by mere material and the forces.
Yeah.
But the building does not come by that.
No, there's as you say, the formal cause and the final cause. I'm totally with you. And Sri Aurobindo, I'm sure you're aware, the way he puts it is that the only way that life could have emerged out of matter and mind out of life is that if mind were already involved in life, and life were already involved in that.
Our opinion is that modern science has certain data, but what it lacks are concepts. And so it is trying to plug in those with concepts which are redundant, which don't actually apply there. So it's becoming like something like a procrustal bed, trying to extend it. Where, for example, you talk about you were saying that in the beginning universe exploded and then some things happened. But actually in that also, when you talk about the particles, then how these particles broke into two symmetries, that is not understood.
No.
What is supersymmetry, not understood.
No.
Then if you have so many gaps, so therefore this is an open question, and let us come together and think about solutions.
So our idea is that let us have a dialogue on this and see how different field of philosophy, religion, arts and science can contribute towards this. We're not saying that just reject anything. No, we have to have a critical analysis of our own things and outside things, and let us come to a proper conclusion what is correct. We not just want to impose or anything on that. That's not our view.
No.
Vedanta is about athata brahma jigyasa. Inquire. Inquiry should not stop and do not brainwash people. Let us have let us pose the questions, good questions, and let us sincerely inquire about that. That's what is Vedanta is all about.
It's great. It's too bad our colleague Brian Swim isn't here. He's our resident cosmologist.
Okay.
He would be an interesting person to have involved in the dialogue if we pursue it. Yeah.
Because you have questions, what is mind and what is intelligence. When you define intelligence, you just say you just give a practical definition for intelligence in terms of like contingency. Like for example, you say that some rat is able to search for food, and that means it is a goal-oriented function. So rat is intelligent, but that is not actually a real understanding of intelligence. It's only one practical definition which you can utilize. But it doesn't tell you how it came to the nature to be intelligent. So, and this thing should be inquired. Why not?
That's talking about artificial intelligence. And if you ask where the intelligence is coming, it is coming from the iron or the plastic, or from where it is coming, the intelligence. Intelligence is always coming from the programmer who put the program in. Intelligence does not come from those all structures. The program has to be placed there. So the intelligence is coming from there, and also it looks only intelligent, like a smartphone. If you say a smartphone is only smart when it is used by a smart person. Exactly. If you give that smartphone to a monkey, it does not look so smart. Right? It does not look so smart. So you can say, like for example, this bottle. This bottle can be. You can say scientists can investigate this bottle. They cannot say what purpose it can be used. I can use it for keeping money also. Right. Somebody can come and put some soil in that for a plant in that. So it depends on the subject, what way it can use. So what is the misconception in modern science is that when they say, okay, this DNA is doing all those things. But Shapiro, who is a biologist in University of Chicago, he says that DNA plus 0 is 0. DNA by itself does not do anything. No. It is only cell which utilizes DNA for certain purposes. If you put a DNA outside the cell, it does not do anything. If you say hand is doing all these things, it is some illusion. If you cut the hand does not do anything. It is you who are using this hand to do many things. Yeah. So the role of subject is completely forgotten in a modern science.
I love the way you're linking the role of the subject to
the
precedence of the whole, to the organism. It's always
what we can only say is that at present that there is a subject, and there are objects, and we have to begin our study from there. But what these atheists, what to say, the objectivists, or let's say the material objectivists are telling is that these subjects are a creation or a result of a material actions. But there is no proof for that.
No, that's just an abstraction.
Yeah.
No, that not even an abstraction. That's just an imposition. That's a dogmatic actually. But the thing is that what evidence says is that there are subjects and there are objects and there is a world also.
We cannot reduce the reality to either objects or subjects. You can say that everything is subject. No, that also not correct. You cannot say that everything is object. When you say consciousness, already the objects of consciousness are included. Without objects, what is the question of consciousness? Consciousness comes with its objects. Subject comes with its objects. So you cannot eliminate. Either people are going towards two extremes. Some are saying it's only objective and some are saying only subjective. No, Vedanta does not say that. When you talk about subject, already objects are included in that. So there is supreme subject also there. There are many subjects, finite subjects, and there is a supreme subject also.
And this is
From
supreme
him,
object, the body
and
the
for
power of the Lord.
whom everything else is all objects. Reality is by itself and for itself. Hegel told this, G.W. of Hegel. And our Vedanta also says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karanakari, the cause of all causes. It does not only talk about material, efficient, formal, final, but also it talks about original cause, which is very, very important. You cannot ignore the original cause. Like Newton law says, to start a motion, you need external force. If that is the case, then who is the first mover? If that is the case, then who is the first mover? So the original cause is very, very important also, according to Vedantic view or explanation. And then it says kartum akartum anyatha kartum. That means the supreme subject, everything else meant for as his object, and he is self-caused. Why? Because life is not caused by anything else. Life is always coming from life, that it must be self-caused. Life is not determined by laws that we are finding in physical, like if you throw a satellite, you can calculate, if you know the parameters, initial condition and stuff like that, then you can calculate where that satellite will go after a certain time. But if you release a living bird, then how can you calculate where the bird will go? It's up to the bird to decide where to go. So the self-determination is the very nature of life. If you drop a bacteria in the fluid column, it will not follow a Brownian motion. It will follow its own driven motion. But if you drop an inert particle, it will follow Brownian motion. So the very essential principle of life is that it is free, freedom.
Subjectivity.
That's why a designed system, nowadays there is some intelligent design, so many arguments are coming, but a designed system, you cannot put in any self-determination aspect in that. You can design a machine, like a robot. A robot can defeat you, but it will not be happy. Robot will not be happy or unhappy. It is the designer or the owner, only he can be happy or unhappy. So this type of thing that Vedanta talks about. What we can produce is all mechanical and chemical systems. But what that is coming from the original whole or organic systems like a bacteria. If you want to produce a bacteria, you cannot produce in the laboratory. You have to go to a bacteria. To produce a blade of grass, photosynthesis, but you cannot use that equation to produce a blade of grass. You have to get it from plant or the grass. This is what is Vedantic idea is.
So if someone were to produce a blade of grass in a laboratory, would you deny that it was a blade of grass?
No, if he can produce, we have no problem. But without producing that, if you say to me, accept my statement, I am a scientist, that it is coming from chemical, I will not accept that. This is not science actually.
Yeah.
But what I see that the blade of grass is coming from blade of grass, or the living plant, it is coming from there.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I have
Like
no idea.
Kant told these things. Intuition without content are empty.
Right. Yes. Of course. I have no idea what's coming next from genetics and 3D printing.
Synthetic biology. Already.
You know about Craig Venter?
Yeah.
Craig Venter, he made a big news that about synthetic life. But people could understand what he was doing. He was only doing a massive genetic engineering.
That's right.
They're taking a living cell and doing some manipulation.
Sure.
So that is always be accepted. You can transplant your heart with a plastic heart. is functioning, right? But you cannot take this heart and put in a robot and make the robot living.
The external can induce a change in the internal, that is the, I mean, let's say the external can induce a change, but it does not produce the the organic. So certain change you can put, but that's not evolution.
Yeah.
It doesn't go from generation to generation. It's just minor changes, which it is equipped by nature,
to a certain extent
Certain
that
extent.
you can tolerate. You can do that much change.
Like one experiment was being performed. In 1935, there was a person called Hans Spearman. He got Nobel Prize for organizer centers. Like because in past, people who are in developmental biology, they are not interested in genetics, because in developmental biology you are dealing with the whole organism. So they had their own approach to that. So then he discovered something called organizer centers. That means when the time, position, space things develop, from certain centers things come out within the process, and it was not totally localizable in the nucleus. So he proposed a thing. So what he did was, he took some molecules, and which were the organizer centers responsible for further progress of the thing, and then there was a question that if it is alive only, it will be progressing further in the developmental stages. So then they killed it actually by boiling it, and then they put those molecules, and they seen that it is still developing. So there was a question like this, that is it possible for non-life to do something like that? And so from that he also proposed one experiment about cloning. That was, he proposed in 1930s somewhere, and it was first performed somewhere in 1952 or something. So I mean, these scientists already understood this. The central question was this: whether the nucleus is important or whether the epigenesis, the whole thing, is important. And they found that by transferring the nucleus from one cell to another cell, it is possible to clone that in a new environment. But it was not possible to make life in this process. Life was never synthesized like this. So therefore the question remains is that life has not been produced in any laboratory. All the experiments are like this only.
Yeah. Starts with chemical, ends with chemicals.
Right.
Like a book, if you say that a book came from letters and papers, this history book or biological book, then it's not a good understanding. Book does not come by just mere random combinations of material and things like that. There is a concept involved. So according to Vedanta, bacteria to human being, they represent different consciousness or different concepts. When you say chicken, it already includes egg and all those different instances of the chicken. So it comes with the whole idea, or represents a particular consciousness. So according to Vedanta, the different species, 84 lakhs of species, that represent different consciousness. So they have.
Sorry, just to circle back to when you were talking about problems of explaining the sudden appearance of form in the Cambrian explosion.
Yes.
How I understood your argument about the explanatory hiatuses throughout our scientific approach, but I didn't think I heard you describe what you thought was going on.
Yes.
In the Cambrian
Our explanation I have given in that paper also. This is our Gurudev explained in Life and Consciousness Vedantic View. There we discussed like a single cell zygote. This is one cell, a particular kind of organism. It grows into all different varieties of cells. Is necessary for that organism, like say eye or a ear or a brain or a heart. So it is not a process of evolution, but a developmental process, a subjective developmental process. So Vedanta explains like this is, you are already observing, the reality is a manifestation of a developmental process from the first life. A single cell zygote can produce a whole lot of different, and these organs are not competing with each other. Ear is not competing with the eye. That is not the nature of the reality of an organic system. Rather, they are complementing for the same goal of serving the same purpose. So reality is meant for that. When they are competing with each other, then it is cancerian. If there is conflict. So our Vedanta says that it's an organic system and it appears as a developmental process, not a process of errors or random combinations. It's not come from that.
This external information will not be sufficient to establish life. We require concepts.
Yeah.
Do you know about this? I think a really fascinating thing to think about in this regard is the concept of convergent evolution, which I wish I could remember his name.
Who's that?
He's a paleobiologist at Cambridge. It'll come to me in a second. But the notion, what he's been particularly struck by is the way that the fossil record gives us, and as well as contemporary speciation, gives us a picture of a lot of different ways in which the development of life has emerged at the same solution over and over again. Right? So the camera eye has been
actually that experiment I talked about.
Yeah.
And what he found out in the experiment is that how the sediments deposit in the ocean. There is a flow of the sediments which is coming to the ocean, and it's an inclined bed, you can see. So different ecological the species lives at different depth. So when the sediments come and they body them, it represents the the different depth of ecological the staying place rather than any evolutionary relationship. What he experiments proves that.
Sure.
And for us, as Vedantic point of view, every end of the yuga, there is a big change. So what it says is that life is as a net. It's like a net, web, right? So in that, if the change happens to the whole web, and there is also an instant the points in the web also change. As a whole, it changes. According to yugas, the whole atmosphere changes. So things comes different. The sizes are different.
Within this age also,
yes.
As time will go, people will become shorter heights.
The descriptions are there.
And this, okay.
It only shows about different yuga cycles, and it does not represent anything. That evolution.
But the whole problem is that they are thinking only the bodies, and measuring bones and things like that. But they never discuss about the thinking process, that is going on.
Sure.
There is no contribution of thought in our understanding of biology.
Wow, very rich.
Indeed.
If we had more time at some point, it'd be good to bring in our.
We are here up to 21st. If it is possible, interested scholars, we can give some presentation. Is possible to your interested people.
Yeah. So Jake has done a lot of work with the Romantics and
Also like
Coleridge and with Coleridge, but also in the context of German idealism, Schelling and Hegel.
Romantic theories of life.
Yeah, romantic theories of life, which are actually very.
Hegel was very much against this evolutionary idea.
I know he was. Yeah, yeah.
He was, because Lamarckism was going on at that time, and he said that it springs as if like something happened, like from the head of Jupiter, some mineral sprang, with all its organs well formed all at once. His idea was like this. So he didn't like this, and he was saying that the problem of this consciousness is that we lack notions in physics. So we can't understand what consciousness is physics unless we agree to include a deeper or let's say different type of logical approach, which he called a dialectical approach. That means we think that things are pretty much as what they are, but that is our misunderstanding of the thing. Actually, everything is coming to being and also vanishing from being. So there is being and its negation. This, I think.
Yeah.
So, and that develops into becoming, which means the becoming is the whole thing. Which means every time it's a dynamic movement of reality, and there are many moments in this. We have to see both sides, and then this process leads to the absolute. But today, the logic we have is very different type of logic, like this modern logic, and we know that this logic came from basically Descartes. we divided the reality in two parts, and then this Kant tried to systematize the things, and then so many issues came up, like time ordering, like something to be a cause of another must be preceded in time, something like that. But we know in modern physics it is not correct. So from one frame of reference, something may be in future, and still that thing may be something may be in past, and future is causing the the past because of the way the relativistic physics works. So those type of logic have to realign with new evidence, and actually we say that logic has been constrained. Our notions of substance have been constrained. We can't even talk about what a substance is because the things don't persist between measurements. So therefore, measurement has a role in saying what is a substance. Or the observer, in a more deeper sense, we will say the observer or the subject has a contribution in constituting what we call a substance. So I think there's enough ground today to create dialogue.
Yeah.
And we must have some kind of a possibility of doing good work.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you have like students or faculties who are working on this type of topics that we can introduce like a short presentation about our views, which will be helpful to know what we are thinking about these things?
Well, the timing is not ideal because
Our semester starts on the 30th, so
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So everybody's pretty much away until the first week of September.
Okay, we are leaving on 21st Utah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, do you anticipate coming back sometime?
Actually, no, we are going from Utah to New York, and then from there we are flying back to India. So some of the interested people can gather and we can give a talk. That would be nice to know this. They are this idea.